Welcome back to this course on totalitarian novels. We're going to have a discussion of Darkness at Noon. That's the third of the novels that we have read. Addie has a big disagreement with me about Rubishov, and so we're going to explore that, and I'm asking her to begin. What is the deal about Rubishov?
I think Rubishov is completely contemptible as a figure. I think he is a man who dedicated his life to this militant philosophy in which he tried to exert power and his frame of the world on people, and murdered several directly and millions indirectly through his beliefs. And I think that eventually led to his own fall within the party because his beliefs only had one end. And at the end, he realizes, oh, maybe this isn't exactly what I wanted it to be. And he starts to feel remorse over the deaths that he's caused. And I don't think that we should pity him or feel empathy for him at the end because he is dying at the sword that he created. And I think that that is poetically just.
I'm not sure I fully agree with that. I appreciate his desire for consistency, even if he doesn't always achieve that desire, and if perhaps he's consistently wrong in some ways. I respect the fact that he's courageous and how he responds to Glenkin's interrogation, I think, with a good bit of courage.
Is being consistent in evil, though, and wrongness something to be praised? Is that courage, or is it folly? Is it recklessness?
I think that's a fair point. I think there is something, though, in persistence and in trying to be consistent, even if you're in error, that is admirable.
Do you think Kirstler, the author, wishes us to see good things in Rubishov?
I don't think so. I think he presents us the interior man's thoughts as a way of examining them and realizing how contemptible they are so that we take from that a lesson of this is what human beings are capable of. And I do think that with the oceanic feeling and things like that, there are glimmers of, okay, there's a different route for humanity, but I think that within Rubishov, it's too late. It's as far as
certainly
humans
too
go,
late.
It's contemptible.
But first of all, this is not all a deathbed confession in Rubishov. He's been growing troubled for years, right? And he's had these sympathetic conversations with others of the old Bolsheviks. A doubt has grown among them. And the purpose of the novel is not to idolize Rubishov, but you're to see that he's a man of considerable quality. He's brave, he's resolute, and see, it's the perversion of those. I mean, first of all, I don't think that you're meant to sympathize with him. We get to see a picture of a man struggling to get out, and he can't get out. It's not just that Gletkin won't let him out. That's true. It's also that he uses the way Rubishov has lived his life to destroy him. And Rubishov is presented as a human being. You know, even Gletkin a little bit, by the way. When Rubishov begins to confess, Gletkin explained, first of all, every time Rubishov confesses something, he turns the intensity of the light down. And Rubishov comments to himself, he pays in cash. Kind of like that. It's a kind of mastery he's established over Rubishov. But then at one point, Gletkin stops and explains something to him. This admiral who whimpers, who's killed, he's killed because he's not identified with the battleship. He was an advocate for big submarines, ocean going, to go fight. But Stalin saw we needed little submarines to defend the coast. In other words, socialism in one country. And Gletkin understands the point and explains it to Rubashov. And that means that he's thinking too, right? These are not robots, although they have destroyed themselves. I mean, one of the lessons here, if you believe in freedom, human freedom, which I happen to do, you work your way around reading the best books, in my opinion, to understanding that we make ourselves. And we have. Aristotle claims in the Ethics that we all have an opportunity to do that. Only the most distorted peoples in their upbringing actually don't know when they're making their choices, and for years, what the right thing to do would be. He claims that we have this understanding of the good. It's actually how we're able to talk. And that choices come to us, and there'll be something we want and something outside that says you should or should not have it. Do you listen to that voice? And the process of becoming a vicious person is whether you do that or not. It's in your choices, he said, not your actions, that form your character. Character is a big word, right? It means etch or engrave. It gets carved into you. And then he says that most of us don't really form a definitely strong character. We sort of lean toward the good side, but we blow with the wind a bit. But remarkable people who are very resolute, they turn themselves into virtuous people or vicious people. Now, these are resolute people. All of them, everybody in this novel is a tyrant to some extent. It is the doubts of Rubashov that make him interesting, right? He's not a Neanderthal. He's still a human, right? And it's a struggle he has to get out. By the time he meets Richard and little Loie and Arlova, he's done so many terrible things that he can regret consigning them to death. He can't not do it. And then he did the same thing to himself. So the reason he's a sympathetic character relative to the ones around him, I believe, is because of those doubts. He's got it coming. You're right. If you become a judge, remind me not to get in front of you. Definite moral sense has this added, and that's good. That's good. But if you in the panoply of the novel, remember this is a novel about a group of people who are the most destructive people in human history, and they're all in that, right? And so Mother Teresa is not in here.
That's true.
Jack, what have you got to say?
I want to take an excerpt from the beginning of the book. He had often looked at the color print of number 1 hanging over his bed and tried to hate it. They had between themselves given him many names, but in the end it was number 1 that stuck. The horror which number 1 emanated, above all, consisted in the possibility that he was in the right, and that all those whom he killed had to admit, even with the bullet in the back of their necks, that he conceivably might be in the right. There was no certainty. Only the appeal to that mocking oracle they called history, who gave her sentence only when the jaws of the appealer had long since fallen to dust. I'd like you to compare number 1 to Big Brother, whom we encountered in 1984.
So O'Brien might be better, because O'Brien personifies Big Brother in 1984. And it might be interesting to compare O'Brien and Rubashov. Let me convert your question into something else, because Rubashov and O'Brien are the ones we're told a lot about. Not so much about number 1, right? Just like not so much about Big Brother. Does he exist? O'Brien says about Big Brother, and he replies, he's the party. He's all of us, right? Well, that comparison In O'Brien, and see, I think the artfulness of 1984 is an exaggeration, which is one thing poets do. I'm using poetry in the very broad sense. Everything contrived in writing. It's the way Aristotle talked of poetry. What he does is he takes it and the party itself and Big Brother, in the person of O'Brien, he simply purifies them. O'Brien is untroubled. O'Brien is rigid. O'Brien is untouchable. He's a little bit like Mustafa Bond, who's also untouchable, although playful. And Rubashov is a different examination of the same human type, because now it is a human type. He's not just a machine. He's not just, O'Brien had obliterated himself as he obliterated Winston and everyone else. Rubashov has not achieved that. In fact, no one ever achieves that. I don't believe. First of all, Gledkin, who's a Neanderthal, he's still a human. He still explains. He still feels the triumph of his mastery of Rubashov, remembering that the mastery of Rubashov is made possible by Rubashov's past, by the things he's done. He's guilty. Not to save Arlova and to save himself would be contemptible. And so he doesn't. You've demanded the sacrifice of so many. Must you not make it yourself? And he does. He's caught. Is it Lady Macbeth who says this? Even-handed justice commends the contents of the poisoned chalice to our own lips. Maybe it's Macbeth, I forget. So in Rubashov, it's more human. It results, to Richard, the first of the tragedies that Rubashov, he executes him effectively. He leaves him to be executed. To Richard, Rubashov looks like O'Brien. He's not sympathetic. We know internally, because that's the power of the author, of the novelist, we know what Rubashov is thinking. And we know that he's not untroubled by this. We don't know that about O'Brien. We know about O'Brien, by the way, that he understands Winston with almost a godlike power. And he understands him so well that he can tempt him into his torture. So he's aware, but he doesn't show anywhere I can remember, he doesn't show any doubt or weakness of any kind. But that's unreal. We know about Stalin. Stalin was extremely, he's got to be one of the most devious people who ever lived. He kind of makes mincemeat out of Adolf Hitler. Here's a tricky thing he did. Hitler and he agreed to carve up Poland between them. The German army goes, the Soviet army waits, lets the German army do most of the fighting, right? And Hitler felt betrayed. He's an arch betrayer. He was betrayed. And then he turned on Stalin. He betrayed him back. And that's when Stalin joined the Western Allies, right? Well, there's a society where you're talking about a panoply of people in which wickedness is taken to an extreme, and yet there are degrees of it. And Solzhenitsyn at least claims in The First Circle that Stalin was personally cowardly. He had nerves of iron to kill all these guys, get them all arrested, maneuver the way he did. They lived in terror of him, and they wanted to kill him. He killed them instead. So first of all, these are people who live their lives like that. The manners of Washington, D.C. are different than the manners of Hillsdale, Michigan. People are good at people are good at power in that place, you know, and they wouldn't be there if there weren't. And there are very decent ones among them, and there are many who are not so decent, but they all have an eye for power. I mean, the ones who get somewhere serious. It's remarkable. And Katie has something to say.
So my question comes kind of from the end of the book near right before the third interrogation, which maybe could go back to what we were talking about with if Robichov is somebody we can learn from. But in his diary, he writes, "The historical mistake of socialist theory was to believe that mass consciousness rises at a constant and consistent rate." And then he goes on to say, "We believe that aligning the worldview of the masses to the changed reality was a simple process, the course of which we measured in years, whereas history teaches that a measure of centuries would be more appropriate." And so I guess my question is that true? Do the masses take that long to mature to an ideology, or does it come on faster than they think it does?
No. Isn't that, so you look toward the back of the book, is that from Rubichov's period where he's writing a corrective to the historical dialectic? Is that what that's from? And see, that's him being trapped, right? You know, Lord, artificial intelligence is dawning, or has dawned upon us now, and God knows what we're going to get. But there is this interest in manipulating people. And you know, first of all, remember to talk of the masses. The word masses is almost always a bad word in Winston Churchill. He wrote an essay called Mass Effects in Modern Life. He didn't like them. He wanted people to grow. And the growth of a person happens in the person chiefly. And they need help. You know, in the experience of Hillsdale College, that means that what's happened to you, mainly you have done that. I think it's natural for you to do it and want to do it. I don't think we gave you that. I think every human has it. You have a lot of it and an ability for it. And this is a setting where you can grow and help others to grow, right? So that's the way I think things unfold in the world. What they think is he's repenting. Eddie's point is he got what's coming to him. Good. And my point is he's struggling to get out. And what you just read is evidence that he can't. See? In the end, by the way, when he has a moment, has a few days, where he thinks he's going to get to go on, all he's doing is getting ready to try again. You see, same thing. It'll be the same cruelties over again. Because he's so worried, he's so devoted to affecting the masses. And that's how he thinks of them, you see. But they're not masses, they're people. And, you know, the glory of the American Revolution is that the reason we may not be governed except by our consent and under forms that make that consent effective is because we are people. We are not masses. See?
I want to take us to the end. But when he asked himself, for what actually are you dying, he found no answer. It was a mistake in the system. Perhaps it lay in the precept which until now he had held to be uncontestable, in whose name he had sacrificed others and was himself being sacrificed, in the precept that the end justifies the means. Do you think he's correct that that is the core of where the party went wrong?
Well, they only got two things wrong: the end and the means. See that, I mean, first of all, it's an obvious point that what justifies means is ends. But if only it were that simple. right? Because you learn in the rich understanding of human life that's presented in certain classic philosophers and in the founders of America, too. They understood this. You all have ends, and you're developing your capacity. You're far along now to pursue those ends through your life. Jack here is going to law school. Do you notice that in this session, Jack has not used a Latin term yet? And the reason is it's been ridiculed out of him. His education continues through this. And he's going to practice law unless he's not. Who knows what's going to come up? Our end is to go to heaven and do good. Those look to me like unalterable rules. I don't know of any others. I think the route depends a bunch on what you encounter, right? And that's one reason I don't like rules in the college. In the end, the rules, when you try to look for an unalterable rule, it always turns out be good. That's the one, and that's the one rule you can remember. So you don't, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to reduce the society. First of all, they have a theory, and the word theory comes from the word theater, whether it's cognate with the word for theater. It's something you watch, right? And they take this theory of human action and they set out to impose it. But human action is variable. He's looking for new rules because the old ones didn't work. Of course they didn't work. And even the ends that you pursue will vary some with the circumstances you encounter. And that means ends and means don't live. They do live in a relationship of subordinate and superordinate, but they have a funny way of taking turns, too. One time somebody said to me, in a discussion, what we're going to do about something. And the hard ones are always you don't really know what to do. And this person challenged me. He said, you always say you do the right thing. Isn't it clear what the right thing is here? And I say, kind of clear. But if the result of our doing that thing, which we don't necessarily have to do anything right now, would be that the next day the college would be destroyed, that'd be kind of a high price to pay for that right thing, wouldn't it? Would it be worth it? So one of my practices, I don't like rules, is I try not to make really difficult decisions until I have to. Because I always think maybe I'll know more tomorrow or it'll go away. Anyway, that means that this rigid relationship between means and ends is not in fact how things work in nature because of our situation in nature. Okay, I'm going to read something. This is Rubashov's confession. He's given his testimony. Everybody in the room is looking at him with hostility. That's the thing to know about tyranny, by the way. Solzhenitsyn writes a lot about this. Nobody trusts the regime. Everybody knows it's unjust, and still it's shameful to be arrested. And people seem to shun you for more than the reason that you seem to be dangerous now. Citizen President, he says, I speak here for the last time in my life. The opposition is beaten and destroyed. I ask myself today, for what am I dying? I am confronted by absolute nothingness. There is nothing for which one could die if one died without having repented and unreconciled with the party and the movement. You see, he's disappeared now. There's only those things. Therefore, on the threshold of my last hour, I bend my knees to the country, to the masses, and to the whole people. I don't know the distinction between the masses and the whole people. The political masquerade, the mummery of discussions and conspiracy are over. We were politically dead long before the citizen prosecutor demanded our heads. Woe unto the defeated, whom history treads into the dust. Remember, this idea, whether a thing is right or not, cannot depend upon whether it is successful by some ordinary standard. Achieving the desired result cannot be the whole story. Let's say that you are called upon to murder somebody. Murder, that means a wrongful homicide. Mm-hmm. If it's not murder, it's not wrongful, right? You can, on the order in an army, for example, kill somebody. But a murder, in order to prevent some greater evil, well, you'd have to know a very great deal to think that that would be right. And whatever you knew would have to be so certain that it wouldn't be murder anymore, right? And that means it's not just the consequences. Aristotle even says there are things that you will have to do that in the abstract you wish you would not have to do, think them wrong in other circumstances. One of the safeguards is you have to hate the doing of it. You have to have your soul in such an order that it scars you to do it. That's why soldiers who like killing are suspect. History treads into the dust. I have only one justification before you, citizen judges. I did not make it easy for myself. This appeases Addie, who likes to suffer. Vanity and the last remains of pride whispered to me, die in silence, say nothing, or die with a noble gesture, with a moving swan song on your lips. Pour out your heart and challenge your accusers. That would have been easy for an old rebel, but I overcame the temptation. Isn't that interesting? With that, my task is ended. I have paid my account with history, and see, that means his own history too, is settled. To ask you for mercy would be derision. I have nothing more to say. That's what he's brought to. That's the thing the book's trying to explain. Now, what do you guys think about that?
I still just think that even within that, he's playing into the party, and even though he does struggle, and I do think that we see his humanity in this struggle, I just find it almost worse because he does know he's doing the wrong thing, and he continues to do the wrong thing and not make a change. And so in this moment where he's like, I was tempted to either denounce the party or stay silent, instead he's giving the party what it wants still and allowing it to continue.
Right. That's true. He's certainly lost. And so you're saying that to redeem himself, he should have refused the confession. He should have used the occasion to denounce the party, which, by the way, one or two did. And then they were brought back a few days later, and they recanted. Stuff was done to them. But you're saying a real conversion, he would have defied them to the end.
Yes.
I agree with that. It's just that you miss the point of the book if you don't see what he had to overcome. Like in O'Brien in 1984, you don't get to see that, right? You get to see that he had to eliminate his remaining humanity. But his remaining humanity is the thing that makes him sympathetic relative to others, although in the end not sympathetic. See, if Addie had her way, he should have been interrupted in the middle of this and given a root canal. And then they could shoot him later. Hard judge. Okay, what do you guys think?
I agree with Addie to some extent that he feels a lot of guilt from Arlova and little Louis and Richard. And I think that his standing firm and holding on to kind of this part, what the party wants, against his own desires, it seems to be his kind of penance for the guilt that he feels.
I just think that's a strange way of showing penance by falling, by eradicating the last bits of your humanity.
And I think he's wrong in this. I think he shouldn't. I think he should have gone on one long speech about why the party's wrong. If he were a stronger man, perhaps he would have. I just think this is why he did it.
By the way, do you know who successfully showed penance? Arthur Koestler. He joined this cause. He wrote this powerful, and at some risk to his life. Whittaker Chambers, another one. We don't read him here, but it's worth reading him. Orwell, right? And in a way, you could say that what this book is Koestler explaining why they did what they did in the mind of a man who regretted things he'd done, right? But he was trapped. And I think that's the part that you have to read your Aristotle to understand it. You can ruin yourself. And these people did. Even the ones who had doubts. He was caught. What would you add to that?
I agree that I think he was caught, and I don't know that he necessarily thinks the party's wrong. I think that he believed so strongly, kind of going back to Luke's point about consistency, he believed in what he did, even if he's angry, upset that he's now on the out. But I think that he had already made his choice a long time ago, and that, yes, there's this humanity that we see, and it's frustrating because we want him to be noble, but he doesn't want that. He wants to remain consistent with the party, and to do that requires him to give up his humanity. So he doesn't go after these nobler aims. He decides to stay true to the party. And so maybe you were right with the consistency thing, even if that makes us angry.
So, for Jack says something wise, I just thought of another executed defender, Socrates. Have you read the story in the 3 dialogues at the end about Socrates' end? He too dies with loyalty to the regime on his lips. He refuses to get away. But in the end, his devotion is to the truth, and that's humanizing. He won't get away. But in the end, his devotion is to the truth, and that's humanizing. He won't run away, and he won't say a thing that he thinks is false. I think Socrates is a preferable character to Rubashov.
I agree.
Jack.
I think Caitlin makes an excellent point where she highlights Rubashov's overriding loyalty to the party. And that theme to me is pretty consistent throughout. I mean, even it seemed to me when he was rewriting the history or trying to justify things when he was wrestling with all of his past deeds, it always tended towards putting the party in the most favorable light possible in light of the contradictions that he had to deal with. And so for me, it seemed to me that this conclusion, exemplified by that quote, seemed to be a sort of fulfillment of what was going on, because it seems the party wanted him to do this. Inevitably, the party is infallible. It should get its way. And even though he has to be sacrificed to history, this cold, unfeeling, rigid subject that we constantly encounter throughout this book, that's his way of doing it.
Churchill says a pretty thing that's of comfort to me sometimes, especially lately. He says, a spark coming from God knows where can set people moving in an entirely different direction. I think we should be grateful to Arthur Koestler, even if he's not cruel enough to his protagonist, because this is a rare chance to get inside. I think it is the most destructive movement in human history, and it carries on to this day. What are the people like inside it? What are they, they're human beings. How'd they do this? Thank you for watching. Thank you, all of you. Good work.